Jason here from Off the Beaten Path. So this is Saturday, the Australia Day long weekend, and this is a bit of a shakedown for the new transfer case. So just got that installed on Wednesday. Thursday was the Australia Day public holiday, yeah, so we're heading out, and we're heading out to Blue Rag. I've done Blue Rag many times, but today is going to be Blue Rag with a difference. We're actually going to go all the way to the end of the Blue Rag track. So for those of you that know Blue Rag, you would know that, you know, the vast majority of people stop at the trig point, and that's where I've stopped all the other times that I've been up on Blue Rag, but there's actually another 12 kilometres of track past the trig point that take you down to a campsite by the river. Apparently it's a pretty good campsite, not very big. Anyway, I just want to see it. I want to go down there. I want to see what it's like. So yeah, now. So yeah, sorry for duplicating that intro for those that watched the last video, but thought it was good to have there. So here we are on the Dargo High Plains Road heading south, not too far from where it starts on the way up to Mount Hotham, and we're straight into the Blue Rag Range track. Just pausing there to shift down to low range most likely. Before getting stuck into it. It starts off fairly gently, nice steady long climb, and look, at the moment Blue Rag is still in pretty decent condition. You do need to keep your wits about you. Obviously it's a steep track, there's drop-offs on the side, and you know, if you follow the high country on social media, you will be aware that there's been a few accidents in the last several months. So you know, pay the track the respect it deserves, but slow and steady wins the race. A little bit more worn than last time I was here. That little rock section there was a little bit loose, a little bit of traction there required to get moving, but you know, nothing difficult in this early section. It really is a pretty easy drive for this first part, and nothing too concerning. It certainly warms you up into it, and as you can tell from that sky, what a cracking day to be going up Blue Rag. This trip was. It was just perfect. Lovely summer weather, not too hot, but beautiful clear skies. So I knew once we got there, we were certainly going to get the opportunity to enjoy those views. You can see here, you start to get a sense of what's in front of you now. Right in the distance there, you can see the track working its way over the hills and along the ridges, and I'm pretty sure about middle upper 1/3, about in the middle of frame there, I'm pretty sure that's the Blue Rag Trig, that high point there. But yeah, a lot of the way along Blue Rag is a spur track, so it runs on the ridgeline, and hence it's called the Blue Rag Range track. The actual Blue Rag summit for Mount Blue Rag is actually closer to the start of the track. Little piece of trivia there for you. The Blue Rag trig point is the trig point for the Blue Rag
So
Range.
This is one of the first main obstacles on Blue Rag. This fairly steep descent here heads down into that valley down over there, and then the track works its way up the other side. There's some steep sections. You can see a couple of vehicles on their way down now, and up the top over there, that's sort of a little parking area, stopping area. That's where Basalt Knob joins the Blue Rag Range track. So yeah, we'll get stuck into this, but as you can see, she's got some pretty steep sections. Good to see a couple other people out on the tracks anyway. And yeah, it's talking steep sections, starting with this one right in front of us.
So yeah, this section of track certainly can be a little daunting the first time you see it, especially if you're not used to driving steep tracks. I remember the first time I drove it, had the whole family in the car with me, and there was more than one person in the car suggesting that maybe we wouldn't tackle this today. But it's like anything, you take it one step at a time, keep your throttle control steady, utilize your gears, and it's really not that difficult. The important thing is not to get too excited and give it too much throttle and lose control or lose traction. And likewise, utilize your engine braking with your gears going down the steep section on this side. And as I was saying before I pulled up there at the top to film that last little bit, even these early sections of the track, you get some amazing views out across the rest of the high country and the range. Blue Rag is one of the best tracks for that. A lot of the trees are pretty much dead from past bushfires, so there's not a lot of foliage obstructing your view in many cases, particularly at the more elevated sections of the track. You can see here, working our way down, it is reasonably steep, this section, but not crazy steep. Traction's really good. The surface isn't overly loose at this time, so while there's a bit of gravel and everything there, it's nothing that you need to be terribly concerned about. It's just be sensible with your throttle control and select the right gear for your vehicle, and you'll find yourself down there in no time at all. You can see the wind was starting to pick up and gust at times there with that dust that came across. A couple of guys pulled up ahead here, just waiting for the rest of their group to make that descent down from Basalt Knob track down to this part of Blue Rag. There's plenty of space down here at the bottom of this section for overtaking. There's some areas there to pull over, so I just pulled up there and had a chat to those guys for a few minutes while we waited for the rest of their group. I think there was 5 in their group before starting this. And as I said earlier in this video, this really is your first main obstacle, and as I've kept on saying, slow and steady is your friend here. Now, what's not going to come out on this video, I don't believe, is not so much at some of these early humps on the track where they're trying to divert water off the track to prevent erosion, but some of the later ones have got wombat holes, and that's where I believe people can get into trouble on this track, and they can end up trying to solve the lack of traction that can result by having wheels fall into wombat holes by utilising the throttle. And that's not the right answer here, because you might end up with a lack of control as a result of that. So the key thing is to try and choose your line so you maintain traction, or if you have them, turn your rear diff lock on, or front diff lock for that matter. And then if one of those wheels on that axle set loses traction, assuming you have a solid axle, but you know what I mean. If one of those wheels, either out of the front two or the rear two, loses traction, if you've got your diff lock engaged, the other one will still assist. Modern traction control does a really good job of assisting in this way as well, and that's certainly what I utilise in the Pajero. You don't even realise how much it's actually helping you, as long as you're not overly generous on that throttle. It will generally work its magic and help you get the way up there. So as you can see, it's a decent drop off on that right hand side, and the further up this track you get, the bigger that drop off becomes. Track's not super wide, which is why it's always a really good idea that as you're coming down the other side of this valley, have a look ahead and get a sense for whether anyone's on that track and wait for them if they are. You don't want to be trying to overtake people on this section of track. I have seen it done, but it's far from ideal. And this last section does seem to get a little steeper. So just in front of me there, you can see that wombat hole, and see what I've done there is I've spanned it. I'll put a wheel either side of it. You drop a wheel in that, you could have a bad day, lose traction, but spanning it like that solves that issue. And that is the Basalt Knob track on the left hand side there. Some guys just having some lunch. And this is the gate for the seasonal closure, so keep in mind that by the time you're watching this, the seasonal closures will be in effect, and Blue Rag will be seasonally closed until the end of October, generally speaking, but double check on the Parks New South Wales site and the Alpine Shire Council site for updates regarding the High Plains Road and Blue Rag track. So once you climb up that section, there's a flat ridge section before moving along to the next peak. Now this, as I said, this is a range track, so you work your way along the Blue Rag range. This is not up to the trig point just yet, but it is a good little climb. This section doesn't have the big drop-offs so much right beside the track, so it feels a bit easier and safer because of that. But it's a good steady climb. Track's in pretty good condition still, so not overly difficult. And it's a popular little parking spot up here. So as you come up here, you can see the track appears to split. The track doesn't actually split. On the left hand side there, that's a bit of a parking area, possibly if people have camped there. A bit of a viewing area up there on the left. And it does rejoin the main track just down here. You can see there's another area there where people pull off and take in the view. So the main track passes both of those, and before too long we are on one of the famous ridge sections. Look at that drop off on the left hand side. So this is one of the sections where you really don't want to get this wrong, and you know, if you happen to watch Gavin from A Go on His Troopy, he did a video a few months back last winter where he drove up here in the snow, and yeah, I definitely wouldn't want to be getting it wrong. Check out his video if you want to see that. And yeah, being the Australia Day long weekend, a little bit of traffic here, and again, these spine sections here are just, it's almost like driving the neck up at the top of Billy Goat's Bluff. It's just amazing with the track falling away so steeply either side. It's a lot of fun and really enjoyable to just soak in the view. I think if I was going to take somebody for a quintessential high country experience and they didn't have a lot of time, Blue Rag is probably the track I would take them on. It's fairly accessible to most vehicles. It's not too far off the main road, and you get a lot of the stuff that you look for in classic high country tracks. And again, as we get closer to the actual trig point here, a couple more rocky, sort of steeper climbs. These are a lot smoother than what they used to be. The first time I drove that was very loose and rocky and a little bit gnarly to drive. Certainly not the case just now. And look at that view. Again, not even at the trig point yet, but you've got amazing views out across the high country. Just one of the best tracks for being able to enjoy the view as you take the drive. But obviously if you're behind the wheel, you've either got to stop or keep your eyes on the road. You do seem to be consistently climbing as you work your way along the Blue Rag range track towards that trig point. And again, this section is not overly wide, not a huge margin for error. And looking up ahead there, I'm pretty sure that is the final climb up to the trig point. So again, one of these narrow spur sections with a super steep drop off there on the left hand side. Like really, you put your vehicle too close to that side and put a wheel over, it's not going to end well. So yeah, this last approach has historically also been pretty rocky and pretty loose. A lot of the surface rock's been worn away, so there's a couple of little mini rock steps almost starting to form. You can see the vehicle bouncing a little bit there, but traction's really good. You really don't have to be too concerned about that. And look, once you're over this section, the run from here to the summit or here to the trig point is basically a two-wheel drive track at this stage. So again, look, I know I've done a Blue Rag video before, but I thought it was still worth covering off the trip up to the trig point here. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed the journey to this point. And as you can see, there's 1 or 3 people up here also enjoying the Blue Rag trig point, which is exactly what you'd expect on an Australia Day long weekend. So just cut the shot there because I don't want to film people that didn't ask to be filmed and put on YouTube. And here we are up at trig point, looking back along the track there, and then panning around, just taking in that view. The distance that you can see up here is, on a clear day like this, is truly amazing. Just panning the camera back to give you a little bit more sense of perspective, I think it works a little better. The other shot was a little overexposed as well. But something about looking at the mountains from an elevation like this, it just never gets old. At least not for me, that's for sure. It just never gets old. And this is out the north side, looking at the range to the north there towards Mount Murray. There's the trig point, well covered in stickers and a little bit weathered from the wind. I'm shooting this in the car because it is a bit windy up here on Blue Rag. So, Blue Rag the whole way. I'm back at the trig point now. I have driven to the end of Blue Rag and back, and let me say this, if you only come to the trig point, I believe you're missing out on the best part of the track. Absolutely. It was an epic drive down there. It was a lot of fun. I'm going to put this in the video before you see the footage of driving down there. Camping spot at the end is really tight, and obviously peak times like the Australia Day long weekend like today, you're really going to be out of luck unless you've gotten there early. So, today there was 4 cars on the far side, and then a couple more pulled up. I could have got a spot if I wanted to stay there and set up camp at 2 in the afternoon, but in terms of trying to go down there at 4 o'clock or something, that's not going to happen, not on a long weekend like this. So so glad I came and did this. Great test for the new transfer case, works a treat. So yeah, we're going to head out of Blue Rag now and probably just make our way home. This is just going to be a day trip, so we might do Mount Murray and head out Buckland Valley on the way. So yeah, watch the rest of this video, guys. Blue Rag, I don't think I'm ever going to just drive to the trig point, unless I'm in a group or a convoy or something. And that's always been the problem. Like, I've never done it before because we're always in a group and we're going somewhere else, and it's like, who wants to drive 12 kilometers to the end just to turn around and drive back? But it was so worth it. Take your time, have lunch down the end or something instead of up here in the wind. But yeah, awesome. All right, I'm going. So as you heard, driving the second half of Blue Rag, it's more than the second half because the distance from the trig point to the end is more than the distance to get to the trig point. So it's gonna take you longer. And look, I was really intrigued to drive the rest of Blue Rag because I'd heard all kinds of stories. It was crazy steep, it was super loose, you were going to have to winch to get back up, and look, I'm sure they're all probably true at different times, but track conditions, as we know, change. So obviously I've got a winch, and I was prepared for that eventuality. It didn't prove necessary, and the drive was awesome. And look at this, the minute you leave the trig point, the view just gets even better. The track starts to fall away from you again, and you've got that 180-degree vista of the high country opening up in front of you. And you can see that ridgeline track running along the spur of the range here. It is outstanding. Great time of year to be doing it. Lots of colour with the wildflowers and everything. I highly recommend you go and do this. Now again here, not as steep a drop off as on the sides as some of the earlier sections. Certainly still there. Older, smaller, gnarlier trees here that have definitely been impacted by the bushfires. Goes without saying. And for me, this was a real sense of discovery driving this track. Never driven it before, and every time I'm climbing up a new hill like this on this section of track, I'm like, what am I going to see when I get up the top? And that's why we do it, isn't it? That's why we get out there, find new places, explore more, and enjoy the great outdoors and what it has to offer. So again, you crest this hill, and you get yet another perspective on that high country. You can see there's a couple of guys parked up there. They might have been camping there, I'm not sure. Cracking spot to enjoy the view anyway. And again, you come to these sections and you're like, well, the track just seems to be falling away in front of me. What am I going to find? I don't know. But look at that. Look at that view. Working our way down this hill, just slow and steady. And here we are moving on to another range section. And that was the other thing that I found, is the initial section of Blue Rag past the trig point. Very similar to some of the early sections, spur track, run on the ridge lines, fall away either side, and it does change as you get close to the end. And look what we found here. Now, it was awesome running into these guys. I didn't write down their names, so I don't have it handy. These guys are actually subscribers and fellow Pajero drivers, so it's great to run into them. They lost the cap off their radiator, I think, but they were pretty confident they were going to find it. They'd had some overheating issues coming back up the hill, but they're like, no, we're fine, we'll sort it out, carry on. But awesome to run into people that watch the videos and enjoy the channel. So, hey guys, if you're watching this one, it was great to meet you. And you weren't there when I came back up, so I trust you got home okay. But yeah, they were able to give me a bit of intel on what the track was really like up ahead. And you can see as we're working our way here, it's fairly clear that we're on that downward descent. You can see how much the wind is gusting there at different times. Now the interesting thing too is if you happen to have any old maps of the high country, there's the track used to connect, and just there on the right, see how the gravel seems to extend out there? The Blue Rag Range track used to connect up with Mount Murray. Back in the day, you could drive it as a loop. I'm pretty sure that corner there is where the track used to connect to. Now, it got closed a number of years ago, and the Wongungarra track down from the Mount Murray helipad now is management vehicles only, but that is the track that used to link up with Blue Rag Range, and I reckon it's just there that it used to link up. I mean, that would have been so awesome if instead of an in and out track you could have gone to Mount Murray and then driven across to Blue Rag. Would have been just amazing. But as happens, tracks get closed, and it's a shame that one did, I think. I'm sure there was good reason for it at the time. But how amazing would that be if it ever got reopened, which is unlikely. The parks guys are flat out, particularly after the bushfires and floods of recent years, maintaining the existing tracks without trying to reopen and rebuild tracks that have been closed. Now, as you can see, as we're working our way down, we moved off the ridge, off the spur track, into forest. Here we are still working our way down. This section was a bit loose and a bit rocky, and I was sort of thinking about what's this going to be like to drive back up, and you can see all those new growth suckers there on the side of the track. So that was a little bit of a taste of things to come as well, because this section of Blue Rag is not driven nearly as much as the section to the trig point, and this is at a much lower altitude, because keep in mind we're working our way down the valley to the Wongungarra River, so a lot lower altitude even than the starting point for the Blue Rag Range track at the Dargo High Plains Road. So you're going to see this kind of foliage and growth a lot more on this end of the track, and that's why it's important to go and drive these tracks as well. It helps keep the tracks open. As ultimately, if they're not driven, the bush is just going to encroach in. And you can see the section I'm getting to now, still a reasonably steep descent, a bit loose, a bit rocky, and the suckers are well and truly closing in on this section of track. So there's some of these sections where you meet someone coming the other way, there's just not a lot of room to pull off the track and pass each other. You can see the larger trees with the post-bushfire regrowth on them looking a bit furry. And as you can see on screen there, final descent begins. Still a little ways to go, but it's sort of the beginning of the end of the track. You can see we're very definitely heading down to the valley where the river is. Reasonably steep descent, and you can see some ruts starting to form in this part of the track. I suspect that people come down here when it's been wet and raining. This track's a bit soft, and in heavy rain too, I'm sure water runs down the track and helps with that erosion as well. Again, you can see the bush starting to really enclose on the track. And it does this all the way along, alternates between these sections of enclosed bush and then opens up and then closes back up again. And this section here is probably more accurately described as the final descent. The track basically towards the end continues working its way down the spur, and then as it gets to the very steep part of the spur, starts doing that typical high country thing of zigzagging backwards and forwards across the hill to reduce the impact of that steep descent. And this northern face here was fairly exposed, as you can see from the wind impacting the trees. Every time you come over one of those, you get a glimpse of the next section of track, and you think, oh, this is going to be the end of this section of track, and I'm gonna be there. But it's the track that kind of keeps on giving. closer you get to the end, sort of the rougher and more worn the track seems to become as well. For whatever reason, it certainly gets a bit narrower as well. And this is one of those zigzag sections where we're working across the hill and then turn around and work our way back. We're just about down now, if my memory serves me correctly. So that was one of the things I really enjoyed about pushing onto the end of Blue Rag, is you still get the amazing features that Blue Rag's known for, the spur tracks, the great views, the ridgeline driving, but then you get a whole host of other components of high country driving as well. So it really is sort of the one track fits all sort of experience. You can see here we're coming up to one of the hairpins where you turn around. Very familiar to those of you who regularly drive in the high country. Apparently we are almost at the end now, so look, it's been a reasonably long video, but I haven't seen anything showing this end of the Blue Rag track, so I really wanted to sort of put a fair bit of it in there to show you guys what it's actually like. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I certainly enjoyed the drive, and would recommend that you get out there and have a crack at it when the track's open. And if it's not a peak season time, you can probably bank on bagging one of the campsites down the end here. Now there's 3 or 4 of those. There's probably 3 this side, and then there's a couple the other side. So, and even on the Australia Day long weekend, the ones on this side weren't yet taken, although a couple of people did rock up while I was having lunch. So that's one of the camp spots there on the left, another one on the right that I've just passed, and this is the continuation of the track down to the Wongungarra River, which, as you can see at this particular time in late January, isn't overly full. And the track does continue straight ahead and up there, and then also runs down to the right on the riverfront along the rocks there, which is where those guys have gone. There's 3 or 4 cars down there, and they've got a good campsite set up. So again, I didn't really want to invade their privacy, their campsite, particularly with the camera rolling. So I sort of got a good enough idea of what it's like down here at this section. So turned around here. But you can see just up that little rutted climb there with the tree roots, get a sense of, there's probably a good campsite up there. You're literally right on the river down here. Would be an absolute cracking campsite. Now, one thing I did find, as you're about to see, is this time of year, this particular time, there's a lot of flies down here. I don't know if that's true all the time, but on this day at this time, there's a lot of flies down here. Just pulled up there to enjoy the view up and down the river. And yeah, having gotten an early start, it was a perfect time for me to pull into the camp spot here on the right and rustle up some lunch. So there's one camp spot up there on the left, on the right, if that makes sense. Another one just in there. Just exited the left of frame, and that sort of extends to the front here as well. So if you're in a group with 1 or 2 other vehicles, you could find a way to set them up pretty much together, I think. And I've parked the vehicle front into the wind.
Now I don't know if you guys are getting this, but I'm just stopped down here at the bottom of the very end of the Blue Rag range track, cooking up some lunch. These flies are unreal. I'm actually kind of glad that I'm just doing a day trip today, breaking in the new transfer case, hopefully not breaking it. These flies are insane. I feel like they're going to carry my damn lunch away. This is the worst I've actually seen the flies that I can remember. Maybe I just don't go to the wrong parts of the high country, but they're really, really bad. You would have seen it probably on the GoPro already. That is the exit track back up the main Blue Rag area. So we are on the east side. There's two campsites here. We're in one of them. So there's one over there and a bit of a campsite in here behind us as well. Only room for a couple of vehicles, maybe another spot just up there to the right. Looked to be more room over the other side. I didn't spend much time there. There's 3 or 4 cars over there. They're all set up, obviously camping for the long weekend. The river is literally just there. Anyway, I'm going to get back to my lunch before I find these flies have carried